Tarzan and the Trappers was a 1958 action film featuring actor Gordon Scott in the role of Tarzan, the Lord of the Jungle. It was originally intended as a three-pilot episode for a television series based on Tarzan, and it was later assembled into a film when that particular project was abandoned. I mean, it works fine as a standalone Tarzan movie, though, and let's take a closer look, shall we? So the film opens up, and we've got Tarzan and Boy, who are heading home for lunch. And Tarzan is played here by actor Gordon Scott, who I think does a fair job as the Lord of the Jungle. I'll be honest that maybe he didn't have the same flair as, say, Johnny Weissmuller, but he's good, and he definitely has the build to be a convincing Tarzan. Boy was played here by Ricky Sorensen, and it was interesting to look this up that he also did the voice of the character Wart from the animated movie The Sword and the Stone, which is actually one of my favorite Disney films. Just kind of some interesting trivia. Now Jane, meanwhile, she's taking a nap when this creepy snake comes slithering up. Now Cheetah is there, thankfully, and he thoroughly clubs the snake to death. Well, Tarzan and Boy arrive and they identify that the snake is a mamba, very deadly, you know, that type of thing. Well, Jane here is played by actress Eve Brent, who, from looking it up, I believe she's mostly done character actress roles. You know, she appeared in a lot of stuff like Highway to Heaven and Scarecrow and Mrs. King. You know, the great stuff from the 1980s especially. Well, Tarzan goes around and he finds that some of his animal friends are being trapped. So he goes to visit with some of the local natives who are already starting to beat the war drums to go after the trappers who have killed some of their men. Now, the evil hunter Schroeder, played here by Leslie Bradley, he wants to bring some of these animals back, you know, like to put them in a zoo, and he kills an elephant mother in order to take its baby. Shame on you, Schroeder. His partner in crime here is Renee, actor Maurice Marsac. Well, Tarzan shows up, sees what's going on, and when some of the guys try to attack him, he lays down some smack, and he sets the elephant baby free. Now, the trappers, meanwhile, find Cheetah, you know, who, as usual in a Tarzan film, is doing a lot of silly antics, and they capture her and take her because they're taking things way too far. Come on, you don't take Cheetah as a captive. In fact, when Boy finds out what's happening with the trappers plan to take him captive as well, saying that they will release him later once they have gotten free of the jungle and left with all of their animals. So Tarzan can't really do anything to stop them, so off they go. So Tarzan takes a break to go visit some giraffes and then hops on one of them to take a ride. I mean, it looks a little weird, but whatever, he's Tarzan. So Tarzan sneaks into the camp where Cheetah and Boy are being held in cages, and he sets them free, and then he calls on his elephant friends to attack. And, you know, they come and stomp on everything at the camp, and Tarzan attacks the trappers, and soon they're taken away, the bad guys that they are. So back at his home, Boy is reading Treasure Island while Jane watches. And Tarzan shows up to talk about how books no good in jungle and, you know, stuff like that. Now, presumably, this is the second part of the three parts of the pilot episodes here, since we just defeated all the trappers and we're kind of getting into a separate part of the story. I could be wrong. I couldn't really tell. They really blended the episodes together, I thought, pretty well for this movie. But I think this is kind of getting into the second part of the narrative. Cheetah gets into some trouble trying to get honey from a beehive and is chased by some animated bees. And Tarzan's native friend, Tiana, shows up, played by legendary voice actor Scatman Crothers. I mean, that's so cool to see him here. I mean, I grew up with his voice from so many different sources, you know, oddly memorable things like Jazz from the Transformers, or even the globetrotter Meadowlark from Scooby-Doo. You know his voice.
What are you kids doing outside?
Anyhow, Lapkin the Trapper, played by actor William Keane, apparently feels bad about all the trapping and stuff that's taken place and wants to apologize to Tarzan about all of this, so Tarzan goes to meet with him. Oh, come on, Tarzan, you know better. It's clearly going to be a trap. Well, he heads out. He goes to meet with him. He goes swinging, does some swimming. He's even momentarily attacked by an alligator. But meanwhile, Lapkin talks with Sykes, actor Saul Gorse, who seems bound and determined to hunt the greatest of all hunts, Tarzan himself. Lapkin, however, he seems more interested in finding some lost city of Zarbo deep in the jungle. So, cut back to Tarzan. He's still swinging around, and he takes a break and watches, I think it's a badger eating a snake. Not really sure about that. It's kind of interesting. He makes his way to the trader post where Lapkin is, and he sneaks in. And as he's about to lecture Lapkin about how he needs to leave the jungle animals alone, an order is given, and this big nameless henchman shows up to fight with him. I couldn't really figure out who this was from the Internet Movie Database, but he sort of looked like the old professional wrestler Nikolai Volkov. Well, Tarzan, of course, beats him up after a really cool wrestling match. I think he even ends it with a body slam. And Sykes, impressed by all of this, thinks that he'll make a great target, and pointing a gun at him gives him 2 hours of lead time to flee. Now, I could be wrong, but I think this point is the second break of the 3 episodes at this point, because we're kind of getting into another part of the narrative, which is the big hunt through the jungle. Now, this hunter must be really moronic to go through with this hunt, because, hiking through a jungle, and I get it, it's one of those the most dangerous game type scenarios for the thrill of the hunt. But seriously, hunting a superhuman man who grew up in the jungle and who knows everything about it, where animals obey his every command, really not very good odds, but whatever. Tarzan, he's up for it. He runs into the jungle. He's there waiting. He takes the high ground, watching these hunters arrive. Now, the hunters are at their camp, and of course, they're overconfident, and they have a good laugh. Tarzan overpowers a couple of the bad guys and ties him up, and another group tries to get him, but he's just too strong, and he just tosses them all around. He heads home and tells Jane to take Boy and head over to stay with the friendly natives for safety. But meanwhile, that sneaky Lapkin character takes Tarzan's friend Tiana as a prisoner. Well, Tarzan comes to the rescue, springs a trap, and he's momentarily captured himself, but come on, you can't hold Tarzan down. With the help of the natives there to rescue Tiana, he breaks free and unties his friend and brings him back to safety. Now, once back at Tiana's village, Tarzan conspires to stop the bad guys once and for all. But what is his clever scheme, and will it work? Well, with only a little bit left of the film, I'll let you watch the film to find out for yourself how Tarzan takes care of these evil trappers. So, some closing thoughts. Honestly, I couldn't find out a lot about this film online. There really isn't a ton of trivia. It was directed by H. Bruce Humberstone and featured, like I mentioned, Gordon Scott as the role of Tarzan. Maybe not the most memorable Tarzan, but, he does a fine job here. Now, according to the book Tarzan of the Movies, Gordon Scott was originally a Las Vegas lifeguard when he was chosen to step into this role as what I believe is the 11th Tarzan. I've watched a lot of Tarzan so far, but I don't think I've even gotten through the 11 Tarzans up to this point. And to be honest, actress Eve Brent as Jane seemed to barely be in the film, which was a shame as she seemed like a fine actress. But I'll say this, for a series of TV pilot episodes, they did do a good job of kind of binding it all together into a feature film. And there's plenty of jungle adventure and stock footage of animals to make it work. I'm not sure about this, but I think this one is in the public domain. You can find free copies of it on YouTube and on the Internet Archive. And it's a decent film, and it's worth checking out.